Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show. Extra amazing because I'm back.
Extra amazing because Saagar is here. Yay, we did miss you.
I know. I missed you guys a lot.
All right, so we got some great guests in the show. Zed Jelani is going to be here. There's some new allegations against progressive challenger Alex Morse taking on Richie Neal. We're going to dig into the veracity of them, how serious they are, how they should be handled. We also have Jim Tankersley on. He's going to talk about the state of the economy and what these executive orders from the president over the weekend really mean, which is, in fact, where we want to start this
That's where we have to start, right? That's the biggest news. So I think I'm taking crazy pills because I came back to Washington and now the Republicans are shilling for unemployment insurance. I don't know what the hell is going on here. But it starts with the executive order from President Trump after negotiations fell apart last week. Allegedly, inside the executive order, it will provide $400 weekly at federal unemployment aid, 25% of that covered under the states. That is under disaster provisions, I believe, from FEMA and from other things. Then also ordering the Treasury Department not to collect payroll taxes from people who make less than $100,000 per year in annual salary, assistance to renters and homeowners, and an extension of student loan relief. Now, we're going to talk, like I said, with Jim Tankersley about some of the specifics here. But broadly, this is just a total condemnation of the Republican caucus, which is what we were talking about earlier. It goes to show that ultimately, the Republican caucus is the one who nuked this deal, right? Yeah. And they're the ones who absolutely refused in order to make sure anything was to be acceptable. They made it known that half of them would vote against something. What's very weird to me is the president has chosen this time to lead, but on a very flimsy executive order. Number one, legality is, I think, dubious. Two, in terms of the effectiveness, which business is going to withhold payroll tax and give it to you if they know that they have to pay it back in 3 months, right? If you want to cut payroll tax, get Congress to cut the payroll tax. Same thing whenever it comes to unemployment. I mean, everybody here knows who watches Rising. The state unemployment system, total mess, right? These people can barely implement the damn $600 a week thing that it is right now, all these lines and all this stuff. So now new funding and a new program and all that. This is a disaster waiting to happen, in my opinion. And look, I'm not against executive action. You know, if Trump wants to come in and save workers and save, eviction and all that stuff, I'm all for it. But legally, the best way to do this stuff is Congress, and he never led in Congress. The White House, first he was like, I want a payroll tax cut, and the Republicans were like, no. And he was like, okay. It's like, well, how about you say, you don't vote for this payroll tax cut, I'm coming at you in November. Right. That's how you actually win.
Well, in that unemployment benefits thing, let's just focus in on that to start with, because that is the biggest piece of all of this. And yes, there are legal questions there, but I actually think the bigger questions are just strictly on the substance here.
Execution.
Because on the execution, how are states going to be able to implement this? By the way, what we were first told is that states have to pony up 25% of this benefit, of this $400 benefit. President Trump sort of updated that this morning. Maybe they'll have to do that. Maybe they won't have to do that. Let's take a listen to him.
Yeah, we have a system where we can do 100% or we can do 75%. They'd pay 25%, and it'll depend on the state, and they'll make an application. We'll look at it and we'll make a decision. So it may be they'll pay nothing in some instances. It may be a little bit like the National Guard. You know, the National Guard, as you know, sometimes will pay all of it depending on the tragedy or whatever it may be, the disaster. And sometimes the state will pay 40%, 25%, 10%, or nothing, depending on how it works out. So this will be, we can make a decision on that on individual states with an application.
So you can imagine,
total mess.
If you're a governor, if you're a legislature trying to implement, what the hell are you supposed to take for? You have no idea, right? We've covered here the unemployment lines going on for miles and miles. So the system is already in a disastrous state. And now you're adding this level of complexity on top of that. There are also questions about, you rightly pointed out, this came from like FEMA disaster funds, which from what I've read, the legal experts say, yes, the president does have a lot of latitude in terms of how those funds are allocated. However, there's also a real question about whether there are sufficient funds there to fund what he's talking about. I mean, bottom line, if you are someone who is out there relying on these benefits, which have already lapsed, of course, I would not count on getting this additional money anytime soon. And then to the politics of it, as you rightly state, what do you think would have happened if the president came out from the jump and said, I'm standing by $600 a month $600 plus up for unemployment, get on board or get out. Republicans would have fallen in line.
Every single one of them would have folded.
They would have fallen in line.
Only Rand Paul would have been like, they're all Bernie bro socialists, and the rest of them all would have fallen in line. You say, hey, look, you don't vote for this, we're coming at you in November. I'm going to pull your money in the RNC. All your reelection, you can't use my likeness whenever you're raising money.
Look, they're such cowards. All you have to do is, like, I'm going to send a mean tweet about you. And they're like, okay, no problem, don't worry about it.
See, this is where lack of presidential leadership on the legislative front really hurts because, like I said, now the right is doing this backflips. And now I am literally watching MAGA Twitter and all these other people be like, President Trump is leading on unemployment. Where the hell was that 2 weeks ago during the negotiations? If they had come out and they had come up with some sort of like big programs, back to work or whatever, every single one of these tax and spend, liberal deficits, hawks, all would have fallen in line.
Yeah.
But the White House never put their back towards it. And look, if I'm relying on that unemployment, you know what the last thing I want to see is this. Larry Kudlow trying to explain how this system actually works. Let's take a listen.
Go ahead.
It should be $800. I beg your pardon. It should be $800 for the unemployment.
800 or 400?
No, it should be $800. If the states step up, we're prepared to match. That should come out $400 federal, $400 states.
Okay, we'll move on because I think that's not what the president said, and it's a bit confusing.
I mean, okay, this is the issue. He's been listening to these people. Kudlow, Stephen Moore, who came up with this genius idea about the payroll tax holiday and all this other stuff, they are the biggest fools on the planet. They have led the president astray completely whenever it came to, I mean, look, I don't want to let him off the hook. He listened to them too, right?
Right, no, he made the choice to listen to him.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one to listen to him. But they're the ones who came up with this entire strategy. But like, oh, let's just implement it through executive order. It's like, no. If they had put the full force of the White House behind it, then it actually could have gotten done. Now, you're actually going to take unilateral blame. At least in the past, you could say, oh, Congress. Now, if this gets screwed, if you lose your money on unemployment, or you have to wait 3 weeks, or you have to wait a month, this is a political disaster.
Right.
I mean, this is from the people I spoke to. I tried to reach out to a lot of people last night. I said, how the hell does this how does this thing work? And they were like, without a doubt, it's going to be a disaster.
Right.
There's just no way to implement it properly. And like we said, we'll talk with Jim Tankersley, but the legal authorities, whenever it comes to eviction and many of these other things, look, the president rightfully in our system does just not have this power.
Right.
He doesn't.
Right.
Only Congress can do it. Now, what we should have done is just put all our eggs in the basket of Congress and force them to come up with a solution. But trying to circumvent them is not going to work out. As much as I want it to, it will not work out.
Well, and what is not in these executive orders is as important as what is in them. And I really want to be clear. This is very, very thin gruel. I mean, the eviction moratorium isn't an eviction moratorium. It's like a suggestion. Maybe you shouldn't evict people.
Because they don't have the legal authority.
They do not have the legal authority to do it. All of it is very thin. The payroll tax holiday on the political front, it also opens him up to charges from Dems that are somewhat founded that this could undercut Social Security. Yeah. I'm going to ask Jim Tankersley about that as well. Jeff Stein out reporting on how those at the lowest end of the income scale are not going to qualify for the additional federal benefits, if anyone actually ends up getting those federal benefits. But also, let's keep in mind the other pieces here that we've been trying to cover here. This means no more money for small businesses. Right. This means no more state and local aid. And remember, states are supposedly on the hook for part of these expanded unemployment benefits, no additional state and local aid. Those direct stimulus payments that everybody had basically agreed on, another $1,200 to go out just like the first round, which was so critical in giving people that initial boost, especially with unemployment insurance benefits having lapsed now, that additional $600 plus up, those aren't going to go out. So the problem for the president, I mean, there are many, but one of them is he's kind of used to, and I think a lot of this town, frankly, is used to this governance of theater. And if you're in a normal time, you can kind of get away with it,
actually.
Right? Throwing rhetorical
Look at Obama.
bombs, signing an executive order that sounds good, but nobody's really going to notice whether it actually does anything or not. In this case, when people are trying to make rent, when they are trying to pay their mortgage, when they are trying to just literally put food on the table and keep body and soul together, some theatrical executive orders that don't do a damn thing when it comes down to it it's not going to be enough.
See, that's the real key. And that's one part. And you know what? At the same time, though, you can't let Congress off the hook here, which is that what the hell are these people doing? Because now clearly they, as I understand it, they were offering clean extension of $600 or whatever for the last 2 weeks and was blocked several times. Now, I tried to read while I was gone, like in the New York Times, I don't understand still why Pelosi or Schumer nuked the deal. For what particular reason? I mean, some have said state and local, some have others. I don't understand the bargaining chip. I don't understand the red lines in the legislation. And I don't think a lot of people do either. We actually saw this. I mean, Pelosi basically completely snapped whenever she was pressed with a critical question by PBS News and accused them of being a Republican shill, which is a new one that I've seen. Let's take a listen to what she said.
The other point Republicans are making is they are now showing flexibility in money for state and local governments. This is, again, a difference. Democrats want more money. Republicans want a lot less. They are saying they're willing to show flexibility. And they're also saying a lot of the money that was passed in the spring, Madam Speaker, has not even been spent yet.
Well, so if you want to be an advocate for them, Judy, if you want to be an advocate for them, let's know what the facts are.
I'm playing devil's advocate here.
No, aren't.
Okay. I mean, look, it is empirically true that they were against unemployment and they were like, okay, we can extend it, which is a massive concession, as we know from the GOP caucus. I do actually want to understand why they didn't do a clean extension and continue negotiating, or if they weren't going to do it, for what? I do not know the red line from the House Democratic Caucus here.
I think that's where the real failure was. There's a lot of conflicting reports about what exactly was offered by whom and what concessions. Pelosi says she offered a $2 trillion deal that the White House turned down. They say they offered this clean extension. Democrats dispute and say, well, didn't go far enough. And also, I do understand the position of, okay, if you take that off the table, then it makes it a lot harder to get anything else done. But I think you point to the real failure, which is something that we've said here from the beginning, which is because the Democrats were so unclear about where their red lines were. It made it less likely for the White House to come out and, actually provide what was needed in order for a deal to get done. It just made the whole thing incredibly, incredibly messy. So, no, the master negotiator, Pelosi, did not come through here either. And I think the failure from the beginning, look, politically, they're happy to watch the Republicans flounder.
Of course, yeah. You want the country to burn if you're a Democrat.
They're happy to watch it all fall apart. From a moral perspective, that abdication is also completely unconscionable.
Yeah, which, look, 1/3 of Americans are unable to pay rent in August. And we'll cover later in the show a heartbreaking video of a woman with coronavirus who was evicted.
Thrown out
onto her own street with all of her belongings. This is real stuff. This is, like you said, governance theater is not enough here. Just signing an executive order, trying to, you have to actually lead. Leading means moving Congress. And Congress, you have to be willing to actually do something. So you are witnessing a total abdication from every party involved. It's deeply, deeply worrying, and people are really suffering. And the bottom absolutely could fall out of the economy.
And I think your point that now President Trump has completely taken ownership.
Now he owns it, which you do not want to own this mess.
I wouldn't want to own this. So I wouldn't want to try to sleep at night with this on your conscience either. All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.